guys, and welcome back to another video. So you can probably tell by the title of today's video that we are going to be doing the 6 fan arts challenge, which will be the first of this year, as I try to relocate where my previous session was for the last time I did a 6 fan art challenge, which was sometime last year, I believe, and I'm not too fond of any of these drawings, to be honest, so it's kind of nice to just do a little bit more of, you know, a fresh start on a bunch of different drawings. So in the past, I have also done more like sketch page kind of format for these kind of like character requests rather than doing just the 6 fan art template, which I feel like both of them have their ups and downs, which I'll talk about later because I'm still going to do probably both formats in the future. But for today, we are going to be following this specific template. So if you're interested in finding this template, just search up 6 fan art challenge, and I'm pretty sure you can find it on Google Images with the, you know, the creator's name at the very bottom as well. So we are going to be starting off with our first character. Now, one thing I did kind of like at the very beginning of setting up our template, I ended up kind of like duplicating the template and then setting one just to be hidden, just in case if I need it for later. And then the second one will be set to multiply. So for multiply layers, anything that's like pure white, like the base of this canvas or this template, will turn transparent, and any other like subsequent color, or like say the color black, can basically be placed on top and anything can be like seen through it. So I'm going to use that to my advantage and set this up as the kind of like line art for the top so that we can have our sketch be underneath without impeding with the white. So the first character, I'm going to leave it as a little bit of a guessing game for you guys. So feel free to comment who do you think I'm drawing. And I'll do kind of like more of a reveal of who I'm drawing. If you're not familiar with the character or it's not like as obvious, then I will talk about the character more specifically once we get through a good portion of the coloring, because I think once we get the coloring portion done, if it's not recognizable at that point, then either you know the character or you don't. Similar to me, a lot of the characters I think I've drawn today were kind of like, I want to say majority of them I did know. This one is being kind of like one of the only exceptions. So let me talk about the process first for this character, because then we can kind of like knock it out for the rest of them. But first of all, I'm starting off basically with the same procedure that I usually follow when I draw. So starting off with a sketch, and then after that, I will change my sketch layer to be multiply alongside with changing the color of our line art or our sketch so that when we use multiply, it's a lot softer. Then I'll use the selection tool with the color fill option so that we can basically fill in our gigantic flat of one solid color, which is typically the skin tone color. And then after that, I will alpha lock that layer and we can actually start coloring the rest of this character. So I do apologize that you're going to be seeing a lot of different sections of footage. So the light and the color temperature and stuff are just going to fluctuate quite a bit since I ended up not recording everything in one day, and I ended up kind of like switching in between recording a character, recording a different video, recording a character, recording a different video. So there's gonna be a little bit of inconsistency, and I'm having troubles making sure that things are a little bit more highly contrasted so that it's not as much glare on my screen, but I didn't want it to be pitch dark in my room, so I'll try my best to find a balance in the future. But at this point, we have our coloring or our rough coloring done at this point. I have already merged like my sketch after changing and adjusting the color a little bit and merged it with our rough coloring, and I'm going to move on to rendering. So this character is Lilia Van Rouge from Twisted Wonderland. Now, I don't know too much about this. People did give me like a little bit of a rundown ever since I've drawn, I think, Reggie last time, as well as whenever people talk about Twisted Wonderland through like my streams and stuff. You know, some people give me tidbits of information every so often. I should have stated this at the very beginning as well. Unfortunately, this character does suffer from me being typically a little rustier at the very beginning of the day, or like at the beginning of a recording session, especially if I haven't drawn anything that day. It does take me a little bit to get warmed up, so this character goes through a lot of liquefying, and I feel like it just doesn't really capture the similar vibe or essence that Lilia actually has for their character. So I don't think I drew him like super accurately, but I really do like this character's like overall color palette. I like the very vibrant sections of their hair alongside with like kind of very punchy, almost neon-y green that you'll see a little bit kind kind of like here and there in their outfit. I didn't include too much, and this is kind of like one thing I'm going to talk about a little bit as like a difference between the 6 fan art template versus my sketch page. So the reason why I chose this format was that I wanted to do a little bit more of like finished portraits almost for each of the characters, and I feel like the 6 fan art template just fits the best for this. So I actually ended up finishing Lilia pretty much at this point. So I mean, I'm gonna merge down my layers. I also dropped in a background color, and we'll move on to the second character. Now, like I said, I'm gonna let you guys guess for the majority of it until we get past the coloring. So let me get back onto topic a little bit. So the other format that I've done these kind of like character suggestion videos and just doing artwork of any of the characters that you guys have mentioned to me in those posts is the sketch page. So I do sketch pages quite a bit. It's very loose and a little bit more freeing for me because I'm not restricted to, let's say, this rectangular box. So for me, it's kind of like a difference on whether or not I want things to be more polished and consistent versus something that has a little bit more inconsistency and very loose. So when I'm doing the sketch pages, I get a little bit more space and room to just play around with poses and do a little bit more of the character as long as there's space provided. And I kind of just like wedge characters into different spots and I can fill it up as much as I can. Well, this one's a little bit more restricted, but like I said, it's a little bit easier for me to make this much more clean compared to the sketch page, because hence it's called the sketch page, because I'm leaving it more like colored sketches rather than doing full renders. Otherwise, it would probably take me even longer than doing these really quick portraits in this kind of like template or format, if anyone actually cares about that. So I'm going to talk about the character in a little bit of like a vague way. So this character was suggested, I think it's like majority by one person, but I am kind of like, I was gonna say curious, but I already know about them technically, but I had an urge to draw more VTubers because they have very interesting designs. So kind of like as a hint, if you're not familiar with this character, it is a VTuber. So their design and like general color palette and demeanor I do really like, especially during like pre-debut when we only got, I feel like, their teasers. Their design stuck out to me probably the most out of all of them. There are, I think there's 5 of them in this group or this wave, but this one definitely, like, the color palette spoke to me. I like the general vibe of this character. I tend to lean a little bit more towards like cutesier people or vibes, so there is another kind of character liver I guess I would actually probably watch a little bit more compared to this person. But drawing wise, I had a lot of fun. I think out of all the characters that I drew today, I like their portrait probably the most. There are 2 other characters that I've definitely wished I drew them a little bit differently, but starting off, this one I probably wouldn't change anything at this point, and I would like to do more fan art of them maybe in the future. But like I said, in general, I would like to do fan art of just like any VTuber that I enjoy watching or watch occasionally, because a lot of them have very interesting and very kind of like unique designs to a certain extent. Or if you're like into like gachas or mobile games, it's kind of like to that extent where a lot of them are very detailed. There's like usually a plethora of different characters and like color palettes, design that probably will cater or suit your taste. So I definitely highly recommend kind of like checking them out if that's something you're interested in. I personally just like having streams in the background, and it's kind of bonus if I like their design. I'm more focused on kind of like the vibe of the stream as well as like the personality, and just like whether or not they play games that either I'm interested in or that I enjoy. Typically, I do like a lot of the ones that tend to yap or talk a lot, just in general, so it's just nice to have something in the background. So I kind of yapped my way through the entirety of that, but we are past kind of like the coloring portion. We're just rendering. So this character is Elias Delborn from First Stage Production, and I believe they're kind of like a inventor, scientist kind of character. I just really like their color palette like a heck of a lot. Their design's really nice, so it kind of has like this very bright tealy kind of color, and it's mixed with this purple, and it's like, I don't know, the contrast of it is just really nice. And he has like the lab coat, and just like the general aesthetic of it's just you know, something I've been enjoying. So hopefully I did him justice. I do apologize if it doesn't really look like him. For the most part, like that one probably the most out of like the set of 6 that I've drawn today. But we'll move on to the next character. So this one was a little bit harder to, I guess, like translate into my style in a way. I've been trying my best, at least whenever I draw characters that are a little bit more like not similar to my style, I still want to keep a lot of those aspects still present of that character into my style, as well as like what it was before, so that they still have like some sort of recognizability. I definitely think that I did struggle in terms of trying to capture this character's likeness because, like I mentioned, their style is like very different from mine, and I definitely have a harder time trying to stylize like much shorter, spikier hair. So unfortunately, I will not end up rendering it all like too much because I didn't really want to think about where the flow of the hair was going to be. I don't know if it's a giveaway with the sword in this person's mouth. I don't know how many characters actually do this, so if it's a giveaway, then I'm glad. Hopefully he's a little bit recognizable at this point. I've also struggled with just like more ikemen, less cutesy and less bishonen type of characters, because my style leans more towards like, especially for men, I guess, it's definitely more cutesy and slightly more like pretty boy rather than someone more masculine, a little bit more tougher or cooler. And that's something I would like to try to tackle a little bit more here and there every so often. My goal is to draw ikemen first because that's like what I'm interested in more right now, but later on definitely I want to try to do a little bit more variety. Oh, another thing for the first 3 characters that I ended up drawing, because they're at the very top where the title is, and I was trying my best not to be too restricted to just the boxes. Otherwise, I know some like either poses or their faces or whatever angle that I want to draw them in might feel a little bit more awkward because I'm being very conscious about where the border is. So I didn't mind if the characters would break out of the borders a little bit more, but I didn't want them to be fully covering the text because I feel like the text is a little bit important for this particular kind of like drawing trend to a certain degree. So kind of below the template layer, but above all of my drawings, I ended up putting like a stroke of white around the text if any of the characters' hair or, you know, I guess in this case, Lilia's hat as well kind of like cuts through the text. I just make sure that it's above those layers so that we can have the text stand out at this point. The other 3 at the very bottom, I don't really have to worry about this, but I do end up having a little bit of overlap because there's gonna be one character that's gonna have like a ginormous hat that might cut into this character, which I am drawing Zoro from One Piece. So I mentioned at like the beginning of this video that there's gonna be characters that like I know, but like I don't really like. I feel like there's always like 3 kind of sections. So you either know the character or you don't. But my bubble for what I would consider I know the character, sometimes it's purely just visually. I know a little bit about like Zoro's personality because I do follow a person who really likes Zoro and they do a lot of One Piece fan art as well. But I don't really know too much about like his lore, or if I'm going to be drawing him out of character, what's the purpose of him, you know, triple wielding swords, so like 1 sword in each hand and as well as 1 in his mouth. I don't know the purpose of it. Also, another mistake I didn't really catch until now, which I do make a few, and I do end up correcting one of them, but here for Zoro, I ended up forgetting to push his earrings back. So he has like 3 sword earrings in the one ear, and it makes more sense if I put them behind the sword rather than flowing in the front. So if we ignore that, I actually am not too disappointed with this one. I don't think it really looks like Zoro, but it definitely is like a character that I feel like I wouldn't have drawn otherwise because it's very much not the type of character I draw more naturally, I guess. I definitely had to push myself just a bit to make sure that he doesn't read too like cutesy, too shoujo-y in a sense. So yeah, that's Zoro for you guys. Next up, we are working on character number 4. Now this character, it's kind of like in the same vein as Zoro. I've seen the character before. I've heard people talk about this character, and I know how popular the series is, but I do not know anything about this character. If anything, this is the second I think, character that I've drawn from this particular series, and one of the drawings that I wish I drew them differently, because something that I mentioned before, I didn't really want to hopefully default too badly into like my normal style. Like I said, I kind of wanted to make sure that I incorporate a little bit more of the other art style into my style so that the character becomes a little bit more recognizable. But this one struggled quite a bit. And as we're talking about struggling, I struggled with the hands very badly. I drew the hands 4 times and decided that I would draw the hands separately on a different layer and completely separate from the face, and then eventually I'll just move it into place afterwards, because I don't know if it was because it was being hidden by the chin, or I was feeling a little bit restricted with the placement of where the box was. I was just struggling to place the hands. Somehow it worked a little bit easier when I drew it separately and then put it back in later. So luckily it kind of worked out that way. Also, don't be too attached with the hair at this point. He's gonna get it shaved a little bit when I start to color and render, because I try my best to keep kind of like finagling my way into trying to fix this character, because I just don't think I made him very recognizable. So I do apologize to any fans of this character. I might see if I will do a sketch page of this particular series, because I do get a lot of requests from people wanting me to draw characters from this anime manga. And I know I have friends who have watched and really like the series. Me myself have not watched this quite yet, so maybe in the future I will, who knows. But at this point, I was still struggling whether or not I really like this piece or not, so I might do a sketch page version. So if you like characters from this series, leave me more characters in the comments, and then I'll definitely check it out and maybe log it into my brain to be like a sketch page session in the future, just focusing purely on the series. So one thing about this character's hair, I do like the general shape of his hair, like of the actual character, not of the one I ended up drawing here. So because I feel like the length and the shape of it was a little bit more prominent to the character as well, and I don't think I did it kind of like justice. I feel like it was a little bit too wispy and a little bit too short compared to what the character had. There is also a little bit more shaggier and more like kind of like a long bob-ish almost kind of shape, a little bit more rectangular versus mine that's like very circular. So I'm going to try my best to probably chop off the sides at some point and then redo it before I get too committed into actually rendering and finishing this particular portrait. And speaking of rendering, we have Byebye. So I did not know his last name until I had to look him up later to write his name. So hopefully I'm going to be saying it right. I think it's Byebye Osamu. So this character is from Bungo Stray Dogs, which, like I said, I know a lot of people really like this series and are very passionate about the characters. And I think the last time that I ended up doing the 6 fan art challenge, I drew Rampo. And to be honest, those two, Byebye and Rampo, are the characters that I've probably seen the most from Bungo Stray Dogs, and probably were the most requested at the time. Every time I've taken requests, I typically see at least like a comment or two, maybe 2 or 3 comments every so often that I've asked for new characters, that these two will always pop up at some point. And I'm not liking how I drew his face. So him, he's like 1 out of the 2 that I was like not super pleased with. I guess if you count Lilia, I'm not like super satisfied with it. I would love to draw more Twisted Wonderland characters as well. I forgot to talk about this a little bit earlier when we were doing Lilia, because I cut more into the intro portion with this segment. I think a lot of like the Twisted Wonderland characters are very also like kind of like VTuber-ish, where they're very unique, they're very elaborate, and they have like really good like color palettes. They kind of follow into almost like those gacha games, I guess it is a mobile game, so maybe that's why. But the character designs are really nice. Oh, and here we're giving our boy a little shave on the sides, and I'm trying to fix the shape of his hair. So like I said, I'm trying to give it more of like that boxier look to a certain degree. It was definitely too round in the very beginning. He was looking a little bit more coconut-ish, especially when I decided to shave the sides down. But hopefully the length is a little bit closer. I definitely wish I gave it like one more wave towards the bottom to bulk it out a smidge, but here is Dai's Eye finished. And we're going to be moving on to our 5th character very soon, which only, I think it's going to be the only girl that I ended up drawing for today, which I do apologize. Sometimes I'm a little bit more mindful of trying to keep it, so that's 3 and 3. I think last time when I did the 6 fan art challenge, I've also did, I think 4 and 2 for boy to girl ratio. I know I don't draw girls as much, but I do also majority of the time do get suggested more male characters. So this character is also part of a series that I am familiar with, but not like fully familiar in terms of like lore of the characters and part of like personalities. I've only somewhat like dabbled my way into the series a little bit, so hopefully she doesn't look too out of character. And hopefully me, or editing me, is going to remember to actually put in the comments from that community post with the characters, because there's a reason why this person suggested this character in particular. It's because they kind of look like my persona. So if you guys have seen like my VTuber model or my profile picture, my character has like kind of like a more blue color palette. It has black hair, but then the tips of it kind of has like a gradation of a kind of cooler, darker blue, and it kind of gets more towards like black as we go to the very top of like the crown and just like the majority of my hair. But this character, I guess, kind of has the same color palette, which I was not very conscious about in terms of doing for character designs and stuff, because like I said, I've only kind of like roughly dabbled into this game, so I think it was only when I started making my VTuber model that I ended up giving myself somewhat of like a gradation in my hair, just to make my hair a little bit more interesting and less like myself, I guess. Like, you can play around with your hair or like your persona so that it doesn't actually have to look like yourself per se, unless you want it to. Obviously, some people might do like even just like plain blob characters or like a shape or an animal or something else to represent themselves. For me, because I wanted to make a VTuber model, and I did like roughly kind of like merge my persona from my DeviantArt days, which ended up being like an OC named Chio for quite a while. So whenever I like play games, or if I don't want to use my name in a game or anything like that, I usually opt to do Chio as like my username. So if you ever added me like on Genshin or Honkai Star Rail, that's kind of the reason why it's Chio on there. Like, I don't know why we did this. Me and my friend have it like that. So yeah, I think it's like our personas from like our DeviantArt days is what that ended up being. Even though like here, my online alias is Rin. Like, I don't use Chio. But I think at this point, there's not really hiding this character either. So this character is from Project Sekai, and their name is An Shiraishi. So this character, visually, she's probably one of my favorite, but out of the girls, is it Mafuyu? I think that one's my favorite, as well as there's one other character that I really like. I think it might be Nene, as well as maybe Anna? I forget. I know I always get requests to draw more of the guys as well in that particular series, but whenever I was playing Project Sekai very briefly, I did like a lot more of obviously the girl characters. Even though like I rarely played the story, I mostly played it because like I grew up on Vocaloid and I just wanted to play a rhythm game that had Vocaloid songs. But because of the storage on my phone and me being more used to playing Ensemble Stars, it was hard for me to adjust a little bit to playing it on my phone. The way that it is, it's a little bit less forgiving than Ensemble Stars, I find. So I will maybe get back into it in the future. I just haven't been playing like a lot of mobile games in general. I've definitely taken a step back from even playing any of like the Hoyo games, as well as like Reverse, and as well as like Ensemble Stars. So we'll see if I ever pick it back up, but hopefully I didn't butcher her too badly here. But I really do like her design. I think she's like super cute. And I feel like she's more of like that Genki-ish type. Maybe she's a little bit more brash. I'm not too sure. I'm just realizing, did I just spell her name wrong like entirely? I named her Shiraishi instead of An Shiraishi. I just didn't connect the rest of the letters. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to go edit that. I think I might have corrected part of it later, but not it fully. That's kind of awkward. But other than that, let's move on to our 6th character right here, which happens to be... Wow, I was about to reveal it. Let's not do that. But they have a very tall hat, which I needed to block in right away to make sure that I don't cut into Zoro's name and text, and it doesn't cut into too much of Elias Delborn's kind of like art as well, or like their text is like too much, because I don't want it to be covering and being that intrusive into their artwork. So this character I am very, 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 very fond of. And just like the series in general, but I've been very much like slowly pacing myself. Wow, wait. I totally forgot about this. Yeah, so I'm drawing Kifri from Witch Hat Atelier. I forgot. I was like, every time I open up that art book, I get like a full wind of just like wanting to fangirl and talk about Witch Hat Atelier. But I've been kind of like slowly letting myself marinate with this manga for quite a while. So I'm going to wait until like I fully think I've understand everything and fully caught up, because like I mentioned in the past, like I've been reading this thing so slowly that I actually haven't like fully caught up. But I recently got their art book, and I also got like a volume of manga. I got, I think, volume 7 of their manga because I really like that particular section, and as well as the bookstore only had like a certain selection anyways. But today I thought it would be kind of like a good opportunity to take like a first attempt at drawing anything that's like Witch Hat Atelier themed. Now, the person who suggested this, which is Day, so thank you, Day, it was like very tempting. So they mentioned me drawing Kifri potentially, or any of the other characters, which I love a lot. I really love Coco as like the protagonist, especially. Not only that, if you just like want eye candy and just like good art, just check out the illustrator, author, whatever you want to call them, of Witch Hat Atelier. Their art is like beautiful, and I'm not just talking about like the manga art. I'm talking about like things they posted on Twitter before, or I guess they do for, you know, the cover art, or sometimes it's like, you know, random full page illustration type of thing. All of it's all beautiful. And I could talk about their art like so much, and it always like pushes me to want to work more with ink and try to like line art and all that stuff every time I see any artist that can really utilize it to such a beautiful degree. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of motivation every time I see their art. So it's been really nice to have something to make me feel very excited again, especially in like the manga anime section of my interests, because I do like kind of like fantasy a lot, but I don't know. I know there's like more of like a resurgence of fantasy kind of like type genre for like anime and manga, which is really nice because I like world building. I like focusing on characters and like learning about their stories and just like their entire, how their world is, right? So I think that's like very, very important. Not like only in general for stories, but like I feel like it's very, very important, especially if it's something that's more like fantasy-ish genre. So Witch Hat Atelier is just like caught me by the neck and has like a death grip and it won't let go. So I will definitely do future fan art for that series once I feel confident enough. At this point, I'm just like savoring my experience of just consuming the manga at this point and seeing the beautiful art. So while I was drawing Kifri, oh wait, before that, there's an anime coming out for it this year, I believe. So please watch it. If not, just read it, please. So while I was drawing Kifri, I was referencing the art book a lot for like his hair and his outfit because I wanted to make sure, and my phone was just not having a good time and was giving me very crusty photos. So I was like, why not whip out the art book? There's beautiful art in there of Kifri, so we can just reference that. And while I was looking at it, I wanted to incorporate at least a little bit almost of like that hatching type of look to Kifri, I guess, in a way that didn't look like too out of place. So some areas of like highlight I'll add a little bit, some places of shadow I added a little bit because it's very prominent in their art style. And when I mean the artist's art style, I'm talking about Kamome Shirahama. Their art, please. I just love their stuff so much. So yeah, I wanted to at least try to add a little bit here and there just for a little bit of texture and just to pay a little bit of an homage to that particular style. Not in like in a very good way, and I kept it very subtle because I didn't want it to be overbearing, but it was kind of just fun to incorporate into the illustration. So yeah, we have Kivre from Witch Hat Atelier, and I think that's it for the 6 fan art challenge for this round. Like I mentioned, feel free to send me more characters in the comments, and then whenever I do get to another round, I will definitely pull from there, as well as the community post once again, or I'll do a sketch page if there's like a good theme for characters. But I thought it'd be fun to do it this way so that I don't have to be restricted to a specific like series. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!